are 3 genera of Deuteromycetes that cause common skin infections. Doesn't mean there aren't any other kinds of Deuteromycetes that cause skin infections. There are a few others, as we just seen with Coccidioides immitis. But for common skin infections, we have 3 distinct genera, and Trichophyton is the first one. Trichophyton produces macroconidia, microconidia, and various filaments or hyphae that are in the forms of spirals. So quite literally, when we have molds growing that we've recovered from patients' infection sites, we look for all of these visible microscopic structures. The macroconidia of Trichophyton are club-shaped, and notice they have little compartments or little individual pieces that range from usually about 4 to 6 little compartments in length for the macroconidia. Microsporum is the second genus of Deuteromycetes that can cause skin infections. We call the group of, actually what will be 3 different genera of Deuteromycetes that cause common skin infections, dermatophytes. Dermato is referring to skin, and phyte is actually referring to plant-like, because decades ago, we used to classify all of these molds or fungi in the kingdom Plantae. Well, we know now that they're not plants, but we still collectively call these dermatophytes, skin essentially loving plants or skin loving fungi. We now know, of course, these are molds and fungi. Microsporum, and specifically this example Microsporum canis, also produces macroconidia, but you might notice how distinctively different they look from the macroconidia of Trichophyton. The macroconidia of Microsporum almost look like footballs. They're pointed on the end, and they're formed from anywhere from 3 to 6 little compartments. Epidermophyton is the 3rd genus in the group of dermatophytes. So for the 3 genera that are dermatophytes, we have Trichophyton, Microsporum, and Epidermophyton. Now, most Trichophyton and Microsporum genera have multiple species. Epidermophyton really only has 1 species that causes problems, and notice that the distinctive structures that we would look for with an epidermophyton infection are these very round, plump, club-shaped macroconidia. The macroconidia of epidermophyton tend to be a little bit shorter, anywhere from 3 to 4 segments long, and again, the end of these macroconidia are fairly distinctive. They're very broad in comparison to the Trichophyton macroconidia, and of course they're not pointy at all, which distinguishes them from the Microsporum macroconidia. Now, so the dermatophytes, which are the molds, cause cutaneous mycoses, or fungal infections of the skin. We can see these illustrated on the legs of the individual in the lower image, and on the poor little doggy's nose, where the little patches that we see on his nose are patches of molds growing in his skin. Now, there's a medical term that means cutaneous mycoses. The medical term is derived from Latin, and the word is tinea. We're then going to use a second word along with the word tinea that tells us where is the fungal infection located on the skin. So tinea pedum is the clinical or medical term for athlete's foot. Now, other kinds of tinnias, if we have jock itch, that's tinea crurus. If we have a fungal infection of the beard due to a dermatophyte, we would call that tinea barbae. In any case, it's much better to chart on the patient's chart that they have a tinea rather than use the common descriptive like athlete's foot or jock itch. Tinea corporis is ringworm, in other words, cutaneous mycoses of the body, arms, trunk, legs. Tinea capitis is ringworm of the scalp. And many of these infections are sort of misidentified. One time we did think, or folks did think, that ringworm was a real worm because it appeared that whatever it was in the skin seemed to migrate or move from a central spot and then radiate out from that central spot with a leading edge that was sort of red and inflamed. Well, we now know, of course, this is not a worm in the skin, but simply the fungi or the mold growing out away from that central area, that first dot or spot that it got into the skin, and it will radiate in all directions from that central first location and continue growing in the skin until treated to eliminate the infection.